Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar session hosted by Magna Infotech Career Services. Magna Infotech Career Services is a learning platform aimed at bridging the gap between one's expertise and growing industry expectations. The prime objective is to provide IT skills trainings to individuals, aligning them to the skill sets that are most sought by organizations today, while also preparing them for future industry trends. So, this webinar provides a brief overview of DevOps and tools one must know and would be useful to a wide range of professionals. Leading organizations across the world have adopted DevOps methodologies to overhaul their performance, security, and team dynamics. With more and more companies jumping onto the DevOps bandwagon, it has emerged as a highly sought-after skills to master. I take the pleasure of introducing the speaker for today's session, Mr. Sharik. He is an expert in the field of DevOps, Kubernetes, Chef, etc. He has 11 plus years of industry experience along with 5 plus years of training experience. So over to Sharik.
Thank you. All right, so before we start, just a quick check if you guys can hear me properly and if you can see my screen as well. You can respond in your chat boxes. Thank you. Great, thank you folks. All right, so my name is Sharik, as Sapna has already introduced, and I have about 11 plus years of experience in IT industry, and out of which last 6-7 years I've been working in DevOps and cloud and automation and all the related technologies. So the agenda for today's session is to, first of all, to make you understand what exactly is DevOps, and why in today's world everybody is talking about DevOps, right? If you are an IT professional, if you're working for a startup or for an enterprise level company, irrespective of the size, you will hear this word quite often. And again, irrespective of which domain you are in, right? Whether you are a tester or if you are a developer or if you are a sysadmin, you are going to hear this word quite a lot, and you must be hearing for quite some time now, maybe last couple of months or maybe a couple of years now, right? So what exactly is this DevOps is all about? What exactly it helps you achieve? What are the DevOps tools and what are the advantages, right? And then once we have set the premise, once we have understood what exactly DevOps is, then we will dive into, as an individual, what exactly a DevOps professional does, and how exactly you can become a DevOps professional. What are the things you need to have, right? What are the skill sets you need to achieve, and things like that. And finally, we will take a look at how exactly Magna can help you, and what are the advantages of learning with Magna and things like that. All this while, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, anything you want to discuss, anything you want me to, let's say, elaborate a little bit more, feel free to type your responses in the chat box, and I will take it up as and when possible, right? So I'll take, though we have a Q&A at the end of the session, I would encourage all of you to type in your queries in the chat box, and I will try to take it every, let's say, 10 minutes or so. Sounds good to everyone? All right, so let's get started. So first thing is, what is the need of DevOps, right? And one more thing, guys, in order to gain most of this session, I would request you to make it more interactive. Put in your responses when I'm asking something. Feel free, whatever you think. There is no right or wrong answers, right? We are all from different backgrounds, right? So we have our own opinion about things. We have our own experiences with things, right? So I would encourage you all to share your experiences at whatever you think at this point in time DevOps is all about, and then we will kind of bust those myths about DevOps. Right, so how many of you are familiar with this one? Waterfall model. And how can you explain that in a single sentence if you have to? Or rather, if I ask you in this way, that how would you explain your a waterfall model to a 10-year-old? Okay, unidirectional model used for testing. No, not just for testing. It's for the whole software development lifecycle. So not just testing. Testing would be one part of it. As you can see, one step talks about testing. So we have. If I give you maybe a quick 2-minute overview of Waterfall, this was the software development lifecycle model, which was predominantly used in the early 90s and till 2001, 2002, right? I think 2001 was the year when. That's right. Yeah, so maybe I'll increase the age group. Maybe instead of 10, let's make it 15 or 20 years. So yeah. So coming back, 2001 was the year when Agile got started, and Agile was another model for software development. And after 2001, it has become quite popular. But before that, it was all about waterfall model, and it was the predominant model for software delivery. Anybody who is writing softwares, anybody who has some or the other stakeholding within a software development lifecycle, waterfall model was a must. It was being used by almost everyone across the globe, right? So it was pretty linear. Somebody mentioned unidirectional, very rightly said, that it was one directional model where you start with the requirement gathering and analysis, and then you start with the designing, then you do the implementation, then you do the testing, and then you deploy to the intended environment where you want to deploy, typically the user, the client's environment, and then you maintain that. Right, so it was a one-directional model where you once the first step is complete, you move on to second completed, you move on to third, and there was no going back. You could not move back steps. Right, that was not possible. So let's say once you have done the requirement gathering, and once you have completed the design factor, let's say whatever sort of the flow charts and diagrams and all these things, once you have completed all the data flow diagrams and everything, you start with the implementation phase, right? So implementation would typically refer to the phase where you actually start writing the software. Okay, and once you have started writing the software, you cannot go back and you cannot make the design changes if needed. That was in fact one of the major issues with waterfall model. Right, so that is something which was predominant and which was being used, as I said. But there were, of course, some issues with this model, and there were shortcomings because of which it gave way to the next model, which was Agile. So some of the things which were not so good about waterfall, as you can see on the screen. So it was, first of all, there was a high amounts of risk and uncertainty with this one. So that was first thing, of course. The second one was not a good model for complex and object-oriented projects. So let's say you have a project where you have a lot of small components, a lot of sub-components within a big project. So in those sort of situations, it was not exactly a very good model, right? It was not suitable for the projects where requirements are at a moderate to high risk of changing. So this was perhaps one of the biggest reasons, or perhaps one of the biggest drawbacks of a waterfall model. Because once, as I said, once you have done the requirement gathering and once you have done the designing and once you start the implementation phase, let's say you realize that something is not correct or something, maybe you are doing it in an X way, you should be doing it in a Y way. Okay, but you cannot go back. You cannot change that. That was one of the biggest challenges with waterfall model. Any idea how long it used to take for once you have, let's say, the overall turnaround time for the waterfall model? Let's say if today I come and as a customer I ask you to develop a software for me, and let's say this is May 2019, right? What was the standard time when you would come back to me? Any guesses? With the ready piece of software, of course. Any numbers? Anyone here in the guest list who has worked on waterfall model? Okay. All right, so let me give you that figure. Typically, it used to be, let's say, the 6 months. So let's say if this is May 2019, and I come to you with a requirement, and you come back to me with a software or with a ready piece of working software. The average time or the bare minimum, I would say 6 months was a pretty fast turnaround time when it comes to waterfall model. It used to be 9 months, it used to be 1 year, or even more in some cases. Right? 6 months was pretty good, pretty fast. Now fast forward that to today's world, right? Now let's say you are, I'm pretty sure all of you are using smartphones, right? And everybody has Android or iPhone, iOS, right? When you have applications, on an average, how long it takes you to get an update on those applications once the installation is done? What is the typical, or rather average time? Any numbers? $10 minutes? That would be too fast. I mean, maybe I did not pose my question correctly. So let's say you have one application you install today, and you update it. That's an updated piece, right? And then you want after a couple of days, or after, when do you think the next notification will come? Okay, there is some update for that application is available. You can go ahead and download that. Yeah, so I see 10 days, 5 to 10 days, days, 2 months, 2-3 months. That's the average, right? So typically, I would say I mean, again, it might vary from application to application, but on an average, 2 to 3 weeks is a good enough time when you get the updates for any of the applications that you're using, any of the Android or iOS applications, right? Weeks would be, yeah, as one gentleman is telling, weeks is it's a good time to say. That's a good timeline for an application update. Now, of course, when you have an application update at the back end, you have a couple of developers who have done the development. Then you have people who have done the testing. Then you have people who have done, deployment to some production machines. And from those machines, you are getting. So, of course, there is one full software development lifecycle has happened at the back end, and that is the reason you are getting an update on that application. Right. So now why I wanted to give you this example is because I want you to compare now with 6 months with a couple of weeks. Right. So that's the difference, or even not even 6 months. Let's make it, let's say 9 months or 1 year. So from 1 year to couple of weeks is the time period now when people are developing things, and all these things are being used by the end users. Right. And then if you see the last 2 points, no working software is produced until late during the life cycle. So this was again one of the very important problems, or one of the very crucial challenges with waterfall model, because during this 6 months period, what happened that there was a black box. Right. So if I'm a customer, I have no idea what is going on, and you come back to me after 6 months with a piece of software which I'm not really sure if it fits my requirement or not. Right. And as the last point we say, once an application is in the testing stage, it is very difficult to go back and change something that was not well thought out in the concept stage. So this is where the problem lies. Let's say you were not able to explain things properly to the development team, and there was some gap somehow, somewhere. Right. If the gap was there, then there is a very big chance that the end result, or the piece of software which you get at the end, it's not going to serve your purpose. Right? Or maybe it will have some missing pieces which you need to do redevelopment. So as discussed, that is where your Agile methodology came into picture. And what Agile did was it fast forwarded this whole process of development. right? What it did was that instead of getting the ready piece of software in months or maybe in 6 months or 9 months, we were able to get now softwares in weeks, right? I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that. We have something called Scrum methodology or the Scrum framework through which you develop software, and which follows something called as sprints. And each sprint is typically between 2 weeks to 4 weeks, or sometimes 8 weeks is like not exactly very common, but 2 weeks to 4 weeks is the time period when you have the time period within which you get some ready piece of software. Right. So Agile was the one which actually made this one pretty fast, the overall production or overall the software delivery lifecycle pretty fast. Right. So instead of years, now we are talking about weeks, and that is why you see the example which I gave you, that now you have an application and you are able to get the updates in weeks now, 2 weeks, 3 weeks as a maximum. Sometimes you get in days actually. Right. So the a very high level overview of Agile methodology is that Agile methodology, what happens, you have one big project, you break those projects into several iterations. Iterations are nothing but the sprints. So you can have a 2 weeks sprint, you can have a 3 weeks sprint, or it can be more. Right. So typically it's 2 to 3 weeks. So each sprint you take some task, you complete that, and then you move on to the next one. In Agile methodology or Agile terminologies, we call them user stories or tasks or epics, all these things. And every sprint, as a developer, you take 1 or 2 user stories or let's say a couple of tasks, and you complete them in that particular sprint. Right. And then once everything is done, you have at the end of each iteration, there will be some working functional piece of software which you will be able to deliver at the end of the sprint. That's the idea behind the Agile methodology, right? So the major advantage of this is that after every end of a sprint, you have some workable piece of software which you are able to provide to the end users. And what is the benefit of it? That at the end user, he or she is able to get the feeling of the software, how exactly it is shaping up. And let's say there is something which is not being, not something which is not going as per the expectations. In that scenario, what you have to do, you actually get the feedback immediately from the customers, and then you can actually work on that instead of waiting for 6 months and then giving something which is not working properly for you. Right? So is it making sense so far? Any questions on this one? And then of course you have, as you see, if you see, the same thing has been if you see at the bottom of the screen, you have discover, design, develop, first iteration, discover, design, develop, second iteration, then discover, design, develop, third iteration, and it goes on and on and on, right? A number of iterations. Right. So this thing we sometimes also call is as a feedback loop. Okay, we call this as an agile feedback loop, where you take something, you design it, you develop it, and then you move on to the next one. Right, and typically the feedback loops, what happens, why we call this a feedback loop, is that because you take the feedback from the customer and or the end users or the stakeholders, how the software is shaping up, and if there's something wrong, you take that in the form take that in the form of a backlog. Now backlog, what it becomes a user story or a task. Okay, and that task you complete in the next sprint. That is how the whole feedback cycle or the feedback loop works in Agile. So now if you see the comparison, what is happening here, that in case of Waterfall, you have analyze, design, analyze, plan, design, build, test, and deploy. That's like one single iteration, right? There's no iteration as such. There's one single pipeline where you start with the analysis, you do the planning, you do the designing, build, test, and finally deploy onto the customer's environment or the user's environment. Whereas the same thing in case of Agile, it's in iterations. So every time you have analyze and plan, and then the build, design, build, and test phase That is something happening, iteratively, like once, two, three times. And at the end of every phase of this, every cycle, you are actually deploying something or some functionality of the software to the production machines. Right? Yes, it is a more dynamic model, without a doubt on that. So now, what happened was, this was like end of 2000, maybe 2000, before 2010, around that time, okay, or maybe a little before that. So once Agile became so popular, everybody started using Agile. Now, there were still problems with Agile. How many of you are familiar with the concept of release cycle? And if yes, can you just give me a quick one-liner? What do we mean by a release cycle or a maintenance window? Continuous development and deployment, that's correct. But yeah, continuous deployment is easier said than done. That is what we will come back to. So yeah, release cycle. Anyone? Anyone has done deployments here? Or worked on a change? Release cycle. Let me put that. Just give me a second. Or, yeah, that's right. I mean, maintenance window is a different term, has got a different meaning, but it's closely related to that. Not just that, it's actually about everything. So we'll discuss on that. See, DevOps, one good and the bad thing at the same time is that DevOps is about, right from the time DevOps starts when somebody has written a first line of code, and then all the way till the time the software is deployed onto the production machines. It encompasses everything in between. Now, when I mentioned release cycle, why I wanted to get that thing is that release cycle is it's typically a time period followed by most of the companies, especially the big ones, during which they will deploy the software. So how it works is pretty simple. That no matter if you're a developer, you have written a software, my patching or the deployment will happen only once in a, let's say once in a quarter or once in a month. Sometimes it will be, let's say, every third Tuesday of every month, or maybe every second Friday of every month, right? So it varies from company to company. Different companies, they have different release cycles. And what they do is, no matter what softwares you have completed, let's say you have a piece of software and you have, as part of the sprint, you have completed it and you have tested it. It has been successfully, all the integration tests have been successfully completed. Only thing which you need to do now is to deploy it onto the production machines, right? But the problem is that you cannot just go ahead and deploy it. You have to wait for the release cycle or for the change record or the change which you create. RFC, a lot of people, they call it request for change. You call it maintenance window, right? So all these things actually, when you work with them, is known as the release cycle. So the release cycle basically refers to the terminology where every month or every quarter you are releasing. So no matter how quick you are able to develop the software or write the software, you cannot go ahead and go ahead and deploy it, right? And now the problem is that no matter how big your software is or how good your software is, you do not get the business benefit of the software unless you deploy it onto the production machines and unless your users start using it. Do you agree with me on that? Right? So let's say you have a very fantastic piece of functionality which you have put inside your software, but you have tested it, you have checked it, everything is working fine, and you have got a very good feedback internally. However, you cannot deploy it, and since you cannot deploy it, you cannot get a business benefit out of it, right? So that is the thing, that is a major issue. So again, coming back to the point here, so what happened was, when we say limitations of Agile, the limitations was not with Agile. Agile works pretty nicely. There is no problem with Agile here. The problem is that because of Agile, you are able to deliver the software quickly. You are able to write the software in pretty fast manner. However, you are not able to deploy those softwares onto the production machines. So no matter how fast you are, it is not giving you the business benefit. Is it making sense to all of you? Because this is very important. This is where you know, the birth of DevOps takes place. Can I have some quick responses, please? Sure. Simple enough. With the help of Agile, you have this development having pretty fast. The development cycle becomes very fast, but your deployment is still working at the same pace. Right? The operations team, they still need the change window. They still need the release cycle. So let's say you are writing or you are creating softwares every week, but because of the release cycle, you cannot deploy the software every week. You have to wait for a month before your software goes into production, or it can be a quarter before your software goes into production, right? So you still have a waiting period. So that is something which is a bigger problem, and that is where DevOps come into picture. And if you see one other way here, that you know, there is one big syndrome, or the one big terminology. When you search for DevOps, this is something you will hear very often. It works on my machine, or it works on my laptop, right? So developer has written a software and it is working fine on his laptop. He has done the testing. Even there it is working fine. But when it is deployed onto the production machines, that is where the problem starts. Okay, that is where your you know, the deployment fails, or maybe the change fails, or something wrong with your software. That is where it starts. Right? And that's the reason, as an operations person or as a sysadmin, you always want your systems to be very stable. You don't want to mess with a system which is already working fine. Right? That's one of the key responsibilities of a sysadmin or of an operations guy. Right? So in a nutshell, a developer is paid to make changes. Right, so he or she wants to bring changes, he wants to bring better software, he wants to bring better functionalities in the existing software, he or she. Whereas in case of operations side, what happens, the operations folks, they want stability, so they don't want to mess with the system which is already working fine for them. Right? That's a major, I would say, the difference, or the difference in aim for these two side of IT professionals. So that's where, because of this friction, you have all these issues, and that is where the DevOps as a principle, or DevOps as a methodology, comes into picture, where developers and operations folks, they come and work together, right? And one of the very important aspects of DevOps is that, you know, there is a guy called Gene Kim who has written a book called, in fact, two books, the Phoenix Project and the DevOps Handbook. These are two of the you know, two of the most popular books when it comes to DevOps, and he is one of the you know, senior most folks globally when it comes to DevOps as a methodology or DevOps as a practice. Right. So what he says that, you know, DevOps is 20% about the technical aspect. 20% is about the tools and technologies what you are choosing. You can have Chef or Jenkins or Git or Puppet or Docker. All these tools you can implement. But the rest 80% is actually about the culture, how you change your culture within the team. right? So let's say if you're the project manager, if you're a program manager whose job is to drive DevOps culture within your organization or within your project, the first thing which you need to work on is change the culture, change the behavior, and change the mindset of your developers, your testers, and your operations professionals, right? And when I say operations, typically I'm referring to the people who are helping me keeping my data center up and running. So all those VMware professionals, Windows, Linux, storage professionals, networking professionals, DB administrators, right? The people who are the hardware enablers, like the people who actually go and put those cables inside the data centers. So all these people combined are, I'm calling them as operations folks, and all of them, they have to work together in order to achieve the best possible solutions within DevOps, right? So the first thing which you need to work on is the change the mindset of the people. Take all these stakeholders, make them aware of things, be transparent. You have to be transparent in this one. That is something which is very crucial. So now comes the question, what exactly is DevOps, right? So you have a number of stages. So if you notice all these keywords on your screen, what you say is plan, code, build, test, and then deploy, operate, and monitor. These are part of your software development lifecycle. You start with planning, then you do the coding, you do the building, you do the testing, then you deploy your testing, the software which you have tested already. You deploy it onto the production machines, or you can do it on pre-prod machines and everything, right? Once that is done, you move on to the normal operations, and then you monitor them with the help of any of the monitoring tools out there, right? So again, when it comes to planning, you have tools like Git, Subversion, Jira, and all, which helps you do the planning. When it comes to coding, again, these are the tools which help you. You can have code management you can do through Git or Subversion. You must have heard of tools called GitHub, Bitbucket, right? SVN. These are the tools which are predominantly used nowadays to work with your code base. Then you have a build tool. So for example, if you're using a Java-based code base, let's say you are a Java shop, and you're using Java as your, Java is your language of choice, and you are building a Java code. So of course you will use tools like Maven and Gradle. If let's say you are on .NET, then probably you will use tools such as MS Build, Enant, and like that. Right. When it comes to testing, so you have tools like Selenium, JUnit, and all. So you will do all these testing with the help of these tools. You have a lot of different frameworks to work with. These are just some of the most popular ones out there. And in the middle, you have this tool called Jenkins, or we call this as continuous integration tools. Jenkins is one of the most popular out there. Apart from that, you have Bamboo, you have Hudson, you have Travis CI, you have Circle CI, you have CodeShip, you have TeamCity, right? So there are a number of tools actually. And then of course for deployment you can use Docker. I'm sure you must have heard of Docker, at least even if you have not worked on it, or if you don't know about what Docker is, but I'm sure you must have heard of it, right? Docker and container technology. That is something which is the buzzword of the industry today. So if you want to, let's say, make a career in DevOps, and in general, if you want your career to kind of shoot up, then you have to have Docker knowledge or container knowledge before you can work. And that goes for the developers, for the testers, as well as for the the operations professionals as well, all alike. So if you're an IT professional, you have to know Docker. There is no denying on that fact. Then you have tools such as, from configuration management perspective, you have Ansible, Chef, SaltStack, Puppet, which help you keep your environment consistent. And finally, you have this monitoring tools such as Nagios, Splunk, ELK Stack, Logstash. Then you have Logarithm, SolarWinds. Again, you have like n number of tools which help you do the monitoring. So you have different stages, right? So you have different tools and different stages in DevOps. So, and you can actually map this one with your software development lifecycle. When you do Agile, when you do development using Agile methodology, this is something which you closely follow, right? So the first stage, of course, is the source code management tool or the version control tool. So tools such as Git, SVN, GitHub, Bitbucket, all these tools, they are at your disposal, which help you in keeping your code base safe, keeping your code base version controlled. So in that case, let's say something happens with your code and let's say it fails for some reason, you always have an option of reverting back to the previous version. It sort of gives you the time machine with your code base, right? And you can go back and forth in time in order to work with it as per your need. That's the best part of it. Once that is done, you have this continuous integration tools, which help you in compilation, validation, code review, unit testing, integration testing. So you have all these software testing stages and software integration stages. They will be taken care by the continuous integration tools. Then we have continuous delivery and deployment. So of course they are very closely interrelated, delivery and deployment. So what happens is, anything after, once you have your code base has been tested, then you have a couple of steps before you actually move on to the production machines. So you might be deploying your code to pre-prod, you might be deploying to let's say staging, and you must be doing UAT testing or some other sort of smoke testing. So various types of, right? So it's more about testing and validating that your software is going to work properly in the once it is deployed onto the production machines, right? That is where the delivery and the deployment comes into picture, right? And then deploying the tested applications on the prod server for releases. So let me give you a very good, a very basic example to make you understand the difference between delivery and deployment. Before I explain that, I have a quick question for all of you. What is the frequency of your deployments? So you are all working for IT companies, right? In some or the other capacity. So what is the typical frequency you follow in your company for the software deployment or the application deployment? Is it in weeks or months or years? How does it work? Once a month, okay. Okay, so let's take maybe typically people will use monthly or let's say quarterly or in some cases fortnightly, once in 2 weeks. Any idea, companies like Amazon, Google, Netflix, Facebook, all these companies, any idea how often they deploy softwares onto their production machines? Is it on a weekly basis or is it on a daily basis? Is it quarterly? Daily, okay. How many times in a day? Any numbers there? Yeah, that's it. Depends on our offers and other things. That's correct. But I'm talking about an average figure here. So on average, what do you think is the figure, or what do you think is the number, which companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, they deploy softwares? 2-3 times in a single day. Okay. What if I told you that companies like Amazon and Netflix, they do a couple of thousands of deployments in a single day on production machines, not on pre-prod or staging or development machines? Like for example, to put it in other words, deployments happen around the clock, right? So whenever somebody has written a piece of code and once it passes all the tests, the deployment will happen immediately. And you will have like thousands of such deployments happening throughout the day and 24 hours, right? So that is the power of DevOps. Because of DevOps, that is possible. Because if you are not using DevOps, then of course you will be waiting for the maintenance window. You will be waiting for the release cycle. You will be waiting for that Friday night or the Saturday morning when you have least number of users who will be affected in case you want to bring the application to a halt. You want an application downtime. Right, I guess most of you are familiar with the concept. How does it work? So why do we choose a weekend to deploy software? Because we have least number of people logged in, and we have a lot of users who are if we have a lot less number of users who are logged into the system. So if let's say we want to bring in the application downtime, then of course it will be least impacting my user base. So that is the reason you choose a weekend, typically Friday night or Saturday morning when you have least number of people. And you don't want your deployment or your patching to happen on a busy Monday. However, the companies, as I said, like Amazon, Google, and Flipkart and all these, they are doing multiple deployments throughout the day. So how is it possible? How they are doing it? That is happening because of DevOps. Right, so there are DevOps enables you and your team and your company to do deployment multiple times without having any downtime. That's the best part of it. You don't need to have a downtime, right? You can continue to serve your traffic to the end users, and at the same time, you can upgrade your application. You can upgrade your servers. Anything you want to do, you can do that actually. Of course, you have to do that sort of setup. You have to do the setup beforehand before you can actually do that. But that's the idea behind it, right? So again, that's a combination. We have seen this slide before as well. So you have different types of tools. For example, continuous integration tools, configuration management tools. You have containerization technologies. You have continuous monitoring solutions, right? You have source code management or version control systems. So different sets of tools are there. Different categories of tools are there. In DevOps, you have more than hundreds of tools are there, which help you achieve DevOps in some or the other way. And as I said sometime earlier, that DevOps starts with a developer. When a developer starts his or her first line of code, from then onwards, it goes all the way to when you deploy your software to the production machines and beyond. Right? So DevOps is complete software development lifecycle, and that is the reason you will find DevOps professionals coming from all walks of IT. You will find developers who have become DevOps engineers. You will find testers who have become DevOps engineers, and you will find operations folks, the sysadmins, the VMware professionals, the Windows professionals. They have become DevOps engineers as well. Right, and so these are some of the benefits. We have already spoken about this, so let me just quickly kind of reiterate this. If you talk about the some of the very clear-cut benefits of achieving DevOps or working with DevOps is something you have very good cross-team collaboration, which actually makes you more agile, and code is deployed 30 times more frequently. So once you achieve DevOps, you can actually do the deployment the way I was talking about companies like Amazon and Flipkart. You can do the deployment multiple times in a single day without waiting for a production downtime or anything like that. You don't have to wait for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 quarter before your feature gets released to the end users. Right? And because you are doing a lot of automation using DevOps or with the help of DevOps tools, you have more reliability and less human error. And since you have less human error and more reliability, you have a lot less percentage of failures, change failures. Change failure is a very common thing, and it's a very painful thing rather, right, to have. You have spent some time, 2-3 hours, you're trying to deploy a new piece of software, and then suddenly something goes wrong. So with the help of DevOps, your software patching, software upgrade, new application deployment, all these things become much more predictable and less error prone. So now, since we have understood the benefit and what DevOps is all about, again, this part should be comparatively easier to understand. Of course, since it benefits everyone and it benefits the organization as a whole, it benefits the project as a whole. So of course, that is the reason why it is in such huge demand and why everybody wants to, kind of move to DevOps. And this slide itself gives you a very good idea, or rather, point that why exactly you should be learning DevOps. You can see the job trends. I mean, I can tell you from my experience, I've taken hundreds of DevOps interviews. Today, current market, India or abroad, US, Europe, Australia, anywhere you talk, anywhere across the planet, you have more number of jobs and you have less number of trained professionals, right? That is the percentage, or that is the kind of supply-demand gap at the moment, which you can see in the DevOps field. Right. This is again taken from the Google Trends, as you can see here. It started from 2014 or maybe a little before that. It is giving you till 2017, but if you go beyond also, you will see that DevOps is one of the search terms which has been searched a lot more than which it was done before. More and more people, what does it mean? More and more people want to understand what DevOps is. More and more people want to implement DevOps. More and more companies want to understand and implement DevOps in their own organizations and projects. And that's why would you search for a terminology if you don't want to work with it? Right? So that's the idea, and that is why Google Trend is a very, I would say, very authentic way of trying to understand about a technology or about a keyword, whether it is going popular or not. So of course, with the demand, since the demand is high and the supply is less, of course it is bound to happen that salary goes higher than majority of the profiles. In this example, if you see, it is a comparison between admin versus DevOps engineers, but trust me, DevOps engineers are paid, in most of the cases they are paid even higher than the developers. If you are a typical Java developer or if you are a Python developer, and if you become a DevOps engineer, your chances of getting a better salary is much higher. And it is not only confined to India or US or anywhere. It's like across the globe. Any geography you talk about, you have this trend going on. So what exactly we have understood about DevOps, we understood about the demand of DevOps, and then we have understood that this would be a very good time for you to learn DevOps and become a DevOps professional, right? So what exactly is the career path which you should be following, or how you can become a good and in demand DevOps professional, how you can do that? So you have a number of things. Again, DevOps is easier said than done. It's difficult to implement. It's difficult to learn. I would not give you a rosy picture here. You need to put time and effort to understand and to learn DevOps. It's not something that you take one course and you complete it and then you are master of DevOps. You have to put your effort. Course will take you a certain way, and then you have to put your effort to learn, and you have to do multiple technologies you have to understand before you can call yourself a proper or a good DevOps engineer. But of course, you will start somewhere. You will do one thing. So you should be having basic understanding of any of the scripting language. That is where you start. It can be Python or Bash or PowerShell or Java. Anything is fine. But at least one of them, that should be there. Right, and of course, if you are from Linux background, I would strongly recommend to work on Bash scripting. If you are if you are from Windows, then of course check out PowerShell. That should be in your kitty, in your arsenal. And then of course you should have decent understanding, or at least fundamental understanding of Python as a programming language, or a scripting language rather. You don't need to be a pro here, right? You don't have to be a professional or a hardcore coder. That is not required here. What is required? That you understand the basics of the language, how it is compiled, how it is built, how it is tested, those sort of things, because that is what you will be doing day in and day out once you become a DevOps professional. Student from civil can do, of course, so far as I understand, the first year of your engineering is combined, and you do learn some programming languages, you do learn basics of computer science, so I don't see a reason why a civil engineer cannot do it. Does that answer the question? The only difference I would say, of course, as a civil engineer, you might have to put a little more effort. As a computer science engineer or a CS student, you might have to put less effort, because a lot of things you are studying throughout the 4 years of your curriculum, right? So that's the only difference. Otherwise, I don't see any reason that a civil engineer cannot do, or any other branch for that matter, not just civil, mechanical or electronics, anything, or not even non-engineering folks who are coming from other walks of life. If you have the zeal for it, if you have the passion for it, then you can definitely learn it, for sure. I would say it's not a mandatory thing to learn Go language, but yes, it is one of the upcoming languages which is kind of gaining popularity like anything, because of course Golang, as you would know, that it is from Google, so they have done a pretty good job at creating this language, and it becomes very it's a very powerful language, right, to work with when it comes to Go language. So that is the reason, if you get time, I would strongly recommend you to at least know the fundamentals of Go language. That is something you should be knowing. And not just that, one of the reasons why you should be knowing it is, for example, Docker. It's one of the most popular container technology, and Docker is written in Go language. Similarly, Kubernetes. I'm sure you must have heard about Kubernetes, which is the most, I would say, most popular container orchestration engine today when it comes to Docker orchestration or container orchestration. So Kubernetes is also written in Go. So you can understand the power of Golang. Then of course you have to have, there are, as I said, you have a number of technologies or a number of tool stack which you need to understand. So you need to have a version control system. You should understand the build tools, configuration management tools, Jenkins CI/CD tools, like that. So you have test automation tools like Selenium or Catalan or something. Then you have logging and monitoring solutions which you need to understand. So of course you have different stages or different ways of working, and you should know one tool or one technology from each technology stack. That is should be your target. No worries, you will take your time. It is not something you have to do overnight. You take some time to create a plan for yourself. I would strongly recommend to create a 3 months or a 6 months plan for you, and then you have, you can start working on that. And take one tool or one technology at a time, and then work towards it. Right? In fact, if you take a course from Magna, we have already done that for you. We have made the course in such a way that we touch base upon all these things, and then you get a very good overall picture of what DevOps is all about, and you are already proficient in a lot of things in a very short span of time. So some of the fundamental knowledge which you need to have as a DevOps engineer, right? Whenever you apply for a DevOps role as a DevOps engineer, these are things which would be expected from you. So Linux fundamentals, again, this is especially true from the people who are coming from Windows background. Even though you are from Windows, even though you will be working on Windows environment, you should have basic understanding of Linux. You cannot be blank on Linux, folks. Okay, because a lot of tools and technologies which we are working on, they have their origin in Linux. So it does help if you have basic Linux understanding. And trust me, guys, if you start working and if you put some effort, 2 to 3 weeks will be good enough for you to have some basic understanding of Linux without any problem. In fact, one website which I can definitely, there are some good courses on Magna, and then you have this thing called there's a good website which you can check it out later on, linuxjourney.com. There's a free website. You can take a look at it, and this will give you a very good refresher sort of thing when it comes to Linux skill sets. Then you need to have knowledge on various DevOps tools and technologies. So as I said, you need to know configuration management, you need to know continuous integration, you should be understanding Git or any other source code management tool. You should have a decent understanding of container technology and containers orchestration engines such as Kubernetes. Right? So all these things are required. I see a couple of questions. Let me just take them. Except learning core subjects, what are the prerequisites? So these are the ones which we are going through at the moment. These are the things which are expected. From the prerequisite perspective, the only thing is that you need to have some sort of scripting knowledge, and you should have a Linux fundamental knowledge, because a lot of tools and technologies which we work on, they are on Linux. So that is something which you should be knowing. Again, you don't need to be a Linux pro, that is not required, just the fundamental aspects. You should be able to create users, delete users, install a package, uninstall a package, change some file permissions, basic operations like that. L1, Linux sysadmin L1 related tasks you should be able to do. Is there a difference between Docker and Docker Swarm? Yes, Docker is a container technology and Docker Swarm is one of the container orchestration engines. The other ones are Kubernetes and Apache Mesos. Then you have OpenShift from Red Hat. So all these are container orchestration engines. So in layman terminology, you can think of them as container managers. So Docker is a container and Docker Swarm is a container manager. Software test engineer would opt DevOps to build career. Yes, definitely. As a software test engineer, you can do. I would say you have a very important role to play as a test engineer, that you will be writing automated test cases. So you'll be working on Selenium, you'll be working on Jenkins and Selenium integration. So you play a very pivotal role in overall DevOps lifecycle. Right? So test engineers, people who are from QA background, people who are test engineers here working on any platform, you are a very good fit for DevOps, trust me. As I said, you need people from all different walks of life in IT working in as DevOps engineers, because you all have your own expertise. And one great thing about moving your career to DevOps is that, in other fields, when you make a change in your career, you have to forget whatever you have learned. You might not use it ever again. But in case of DevOps, you carry your experience, you carry your expertise into your DevOps role. You were a developer, you very well require those expertise in DevOps role. You were a tester, you would need your testing skills into your DevOps role. You were a sysadmin, you would need those skills as a troubleshooter, as an integrator to when you are working as a DevOps engineer, right? So irrespective of which walk of life you are, if you choose to decide that you want to become a DevOps engineer, you can definitely become a DevOps engineer. It's all about your passion and your zeal to learn. Be ready to learn and you can do anything, trust me. 6 months, is it not that too small? Not too small, but when I say 6 months, 6 months will give you a very good foundation. Learning will never stop. I am here in DevOps industry for the past 7-8 years now. For me, there is not a single week when I don't have to watch some videos and read some PDF files or see something or do some workshops to gain understanding of some new technology. It has never stopped for me ever since. So it doesn't stop. But yes, 6 to 8 months will give you a very good solid foundation on which you can build upon your knowledge. Jira admin, learn DevOps. Yes, I already answered that question. Anybody, as long as you have the passion and you have the zeal to learn, you can definitely do that. Delivery engineer, I'm presuming that you are from build and release background. If that is the case, then you have a very important advantage already, because build and release is a very key aspect of DevOps. When we talk about continuous integration and continuous delivery, we are talking about delivery. So you are, I would say, already working on partial DevOps. Hands-on knowledge of infrastructure as code, yes, these things you need. So these are things which you develop when you start learning DevOps. So how you target is that you first brush up your Linux skills, then you learn various DevOps tools and technologies, understand about the concepts of CI and CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and then gain an understanding of tools such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, SaltStack, any one of them, one or two of them, to understand how exactly configuration management works and what exactly you should be learning. And the other key concepts, things like infrastructure as code, immutable infrastructure, configuration management, right? Desired state configuration, domain specific language. These are just some of the keywords which come to my mind, which are like, as a DevOps engineer, you're supposed to know. So again, this question is mostly answered during my previous discussion, but yeah, as you can see that you are a software developer, then you can definitely learn, because you have already coding. See how it works is, I'll tell you very simple. If you are let's say you are from any one background. So basically we can broadly divide IT industry or IT professionals into three categories. So developers, QA folks, and sysadmins or IT admins, right? These are the three major categories of IT professionals. And I believe all of you who are here in this room, you can put yourself into any one of these categories, right? So what you need to do, as I said, any three of you can become a DevOps engineer. Nobody's stopping you from there, as long as you have the the passion to learn it. But yes, what you need to have is that you are a developer, so you need to understand how a tester works and how a sysadmin works in their day-to-day activities. If you're a sysadmin, you need to understand the way of working for a developer and from a QA perspective, and so on. So whichever field you belong to, you would know that already. You need to understand the other two from a very high level perspective and know from the fundamental level. Again, you don't need to be a pro there as well, right? But you need to understand. You cannot be blank in the other two fields. That's the kind of a rule of thumb here. So same goes with QA. Quality analyst. So as I said, you play a very important role in continuous testing because one of the very key aspects of implementing DevOps is to convert all your manual testing into automated testing framework, so that you can run the CI/CD pipelines without any manual intervention. Sysadmins, of course, what you need to know is decent amount of scripting and computer system knowledge, Linux installation, supporting, maintenance. So as a sysadmin, you would know all these things already, right? And you are performing most of these tasks on a daily basis already. So that is where your skill set comes into picture. So then we have this storage admin who you already are working with all these storage related aspects. So in the age of containers, again, I cannot go, just because of lack of time, I cannot go much into details, but in containers you have a very important concept of persistent storage or storage drivers. So that is where your expertise will come into picture, right? Similarly, if you are a DBA. So as a very important aspect of working with application, you need to make sure that your DB is working fine, right? So as part of the patching procedure or as part of the upgrade procedure, you need to take care of the database as well. That is where your expertise as a database admin comes into picture, and then you help the overall team to achieve that as well, achieve that automation from the database perspective. So then the question comes, when to start DevOps, right? When do you think it's a good time to start, guys? How much time it takes to learn for Azure admin into DevOps? See, for Azure and AWS, the thing will be a little bit different. If you are already working on Azure, then it becomes much easier for you. That you need to work. I mean, in Azure and AWS, you have DevOps specific services. So if you are on Azure, you have something called, just go and check it out on Google, VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, right? That is something which you can start. So whatever services are there within VSTS, just take a look at them, see how they work, what exactly they do, and that is where you start. Right. And how much time? Again, that would depend on you. But if you're already a seasoned Azure admin or Azure professional, then I would say maybe 2-3 months should be good enough for you to understand the rest of the things, provided you know the DevOps concepts beforehand, right? So there are two aspects of learning DevOps. One is the DevOps concepts, the working on-prem, and then how you implement those DevOps concepts onto the cloud of your choice. Today, cloud and DevOps, they go hand in hand, right? So when you learn about DevOps, that is the first aspect, and then the second aspect is to implement those things onto the cloud. That is, you do with the help of services. So before you can learn the services, you need to know the DevOps concepts already. So if I assume that you don't have any knowledge on DevOps at all today, I would say bare minimum you would need 3 to 4 months to kind of have a good understanding of DevOps. Yes, so that's a good answer. But why? Why today or why now? The answer is very simple. This is the time when you have this supply-demand gap is huge, okay? And that is the reason when you have salaries are pretty good, right? And the moment you know something, you put something on your LinkedIn profile or Naukri or wherever you are, right? You will be given multiple options for the interviews, right? Just add some keywords on your resume and see how you start getting calls. For example, Chef or Puppet, Ansible, Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes. Just put some of these keywords. As you know, like whenever somebody searches on LinkedIn or Naukri or Monster, they search with the keywords with the resumes, right? So if you put these keywords in your resume, you will see that your visibility has gone high. It has skyrocketed for you, right? And as you can see on a screen that DevOps professionals are one of the highest paid professionals. They're actually, in some cases, as I said, they're more paid or the higher paid than a full stack developer or a UI designer. That is also a possibility. It was never less. It is either at par or more than DevOps, all the other developer and other things. So DevOps is as good as anything else at the moment. Right? So of course, since it is the situation, so maybe 5 years down the line, you might have enough number of professionals, you might have things changed to a drastic end that you don't even remember what you have learned initially, right? So it is going to change, of course, right? So this is the best time, this is the time when you can reap the benefits of become an early starter and become a DevOps expert. So this one tells you a very important concept. So right now the road is empty, or at least with least traffic. So it's easy for you to start working now. Later on, when you have more number of people are joining in, and trust me, every day a lot of people are joining in, every week, every month, people are joining in. They are trying to become DevOps engineers. They are putting in efforts, and people are coming from all walks of IT life to become DevOps engineers. So, having said everything, you have understood the benefits of DevOps and why you should be working. So let's take a look at now what is the benefit of enrolling with MICS, right? So the first thing is that you get lifetime access. What happens is that you have once you enroll for the course, you get lifetime access to the presentations, to the recorded videos and all those things. You have the class recordings available to you. You can watch it whenever you like. You have instructor-led interactive sessions. It's not like recorded sessions or self-paced sessions where you have the recording available. You just watch the recording and you are on your own. You are actually working with an instructor, and you can ask live questions if you don't understand anything. You can ask the doubts. You can have the query answered. Let's say if you have something else in mind from some of the projects, or you have some confusion, you can get those clarified during the classroom, which is one of the very important benefits of this course. And of course, you have multiple projects where you can actually work with. So you have one project is actually compulsory for you to get the certification before we give you the certification of certified DevOps professional from MICS. And apart from that, of course, you have 24/7 expert support. You have you have community support as well, and a lot of other things actually. Projects. So what kind of projects we have? So this is just one of the examples. This is not the only example. You have actually different types of projects when it comes to DevOps. So typically we focus on creating different pipelines. When we talk about DevOps, creating CI/CD pipelines is the heart of your job role, of your work. You automate things. You create workflows. That is your bread and butter. Right? So we give you enough examples and enough references to work with the combination. And of course, first thing is that you learn these tools individually. So Git, Jenkins, Docker, all these tools individually. And then towards the end of the course, you see how they gel together, how they are integrated together to form a seamless workflow or a seamless pipeline. That is what you learn as part of this course. And yes, not just that, you have the, all the videos will be available to you, and the link will be shared with you at the end of the session, or maybe give us some time, maybe 24 hours or something. That will be done for you, not a problem. All right, so that basically ends this session from our side. Let me know if you have any questions, if you have any doubts. So far, I have answered all of the queries. So, presentation will not be able to share, but as I said, there will be this video will be available to you after some time. I think your details are there with the backend team. So once this we do the sanity check and once the video is uploaded, we'll share the link with all of you. We are going to learn about GitHub and Docker. That's correct. We will talk about Git and GitHub both, and then we will talk about Docker, Kubernetes, and Docker Swarm, all these 3-4 technologies. Again, that's technically an incorrect question because you don't install anything on GitHub. GitHub is something which you create an account at. Git is something which you install. Again, I don't have enough time to kind of go into deep any sort of technology thing here, any sort of tech, but yeah, that is something which we cover extensively in our course. So Git is the software which you install. GitHub is a portal on which you create an account. It's like, signing up for an email account. That's how it works. So these are the places where you can actually get in touch with Magna Infotech, MICS. You have email ID, you have the website. You can check it out, and the backend team will actually get in touch with you if you have any more queries. I see there are others. What would be the typical salary of a DevOps engineer with around 3-4 years of experience? Again, that's a very, I would say, I cannot give you a figure here. It can vary from, depending on your experience, your background, and a lot of other things. It can go, I mean, DevOps salaries go very high, guys. I mean, I have heard of salaries people are getting in India, like 30-40 lakhs is a salary which people get easily with a experience of maybe 7 to 8 years. If you're a fresher, getting I mean, if you are selected for companies like Amazon and Google, Google does not have that sort of operation in India. Amazon has got operations, then Microsoft has got operations. So if you get selected there, I think 10 to 12 lakh is a salary for a fresher you get. Startup companies, they can pay you very well. 8 lakh, 10 lakh, 12 lakh is the starting salary which they offer you. So again, there is no such, I mean, I cannot give you a specific figure on that, but yeah, but that should give you a good idea, the potential of earning if you become a DevOps engineer. How much I offer? That again, that depends on a lot of factors. As I said, what is your background? And again, it's not me who offers, it's my company which offers. So again, I cannot put a figure there. But yes, it varies a lot. And again, salary is no bar, guys. Trust me. If you are your worth, if you know your tools properly, if you know DevOps properly, then I'm pretty sure salary is not a problem. I mean, I have seen some of my teammates or people who are known to me. They are getting, as a sysadmin, they are getting a salary of maybe 3, 4, 5 lakhs, and they learn DevOps and they understood technology properly, and then they did a jump of 100% or 200%. So that's quite possible. But again, you have to put your effort there. Like it's not all hunky-dory here. So you have a lot of things which you need to understand. You have to make your fundamentals. You have to work on your foundation. I do have, actually that is something which we do discuss as part of our course. So when you go through the course, after each topic, we do discuss on the kind of questions you can expect. For example, once we have completed Git, what kind of questions you can expect on Git, right? Once you have completed Jenkins, what are the things as an interviewer I look into you as a candidate, which you should be comfortable and you should be able to answer properly. So that is something we discuss as part of the course. And actually you can you can get an idea. You just type DevOps interview questions and you should get enough references online as well. As part of the course, what we do is we not just give you the questions, but we discuss that as well and how you should answer, what should be your approach to answer those questions. That is what we do additionally here. Getting questions should not be difficult. There, Google would be your friend. Right, so what I'll do here, I'll pass it on to the backend team, and if you have any further questions, feel free to ask. You can get in touch with you have the email IDs and the pages online here. You can take a note of them, and you can drop an email to us, and we will be happy to answer your queries. Thank you.
So thank you, Sharik, and all our participants. You will receive a survey asking for feedback on this event. Your insight will help shape future events such as this. We will send you a link to the recordings of this event so that you can share it within your social network. On behalf of Magna Infotech Career Services, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this information and dialogue valuable in enhancing your understanding on DevOps. If you are interested to know more on this topic, do check out our courses on Magna Infotech Career Services portal. It is https://mics.magna.in. So finally we sign off and wishing all of you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.